Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we have the pleasure of having Arvis Owens on the podcast. He's a 1995 Naval Academy graduate and former Navy commander. He now is an advocate for military members who are falsely accused or wrongly convicted of sexual harassment, sexual assault, or domestic violence. Please be aware that we are talking about those topics today. So if you feel like you can't handle that, this is your trigger warning to get off the podcast because it does get pretty intense. Thank you so much. This is really important that we bring awareness to what's actually happening in our military because they keep trying to hide it. Hi, Arvis. Thank you so much for joining me on the Rabbit Hole. I'm really excited to have you today.
Hi, Danny. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I know we've been working on this for a while. We talked back in like June or July, back in the
Yeah.
summertime, and then trying to get you on here. We finally got you, so I'm excited.
Thank you. Life happens.
Yes, it does.
Thank you for finally making this happen. And I want to thank you, Danny, for having the courage to do this. I know this is incredibly challenging for a lot of people. And if it's okay, I'd like to talk to your listeners a little bit.
Yeah, of course, please.
So I want to first reach out to survivors, those who are victims, and let you know that we are partners in this, that we understand. We don't want anyone assaulted, harassed, raped in any way, DV'd in any way. It's our challenge is that you can support survivors and those who've been falsely accused too. And
Absolutely.
so we're gonna touch on some topics. I understand people can get triggered. So if you are and you don't want to watch this, I perfectly understand. But I want to let you know that's where we start from. Is we support you, we love you, we believe you should get your investigations, you should get your support. It's what we have a challenge with is those who falsely accuse and then the wrongful convictions that come from that.
Right. Especially like I know when we first talked, I got really upset because most of my listeners know my background. I was sexually assaulted in the military, and then they basically told me like, "You're lying. You're making this all up because you want whatever, right? Whatever benefit you might get from claiming this." And I was like, "Okay, well, that's not true. Thank you." So when you first brought this to me, I was like, no, I don't want to have this conversation because I'm mad. I'm still so mad. And so now, like, thinking about it and digesting it and realizing, like, there are other victims to this as well, the people that are wrongly accused. And so I think the military is just messing it up completely. And so having this conversation and actually making people aware of, like, both sides of it, so important.
It is important, Danny. And one thing I'm glad you touched on that point is we think the military should get out of the business of it. It should go to civilian authorities who can be neutral. There won't be that political influence on it like
Yeah.
it has been in the past. And so it's, again, there are two sides of the coin. And so it's about belief. It's when you have evidence and when you want an investigation, you want the evidence to come out. And the sad part is when you're not believed, even when you show that evidence, we're all on the same team. You
Hmm.
expect justice. You expect, they call it due process. It's just fairness, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't realize in the military it started because there was a problem. There was a problem, and victims weren't being believed, and so therefore they did a bunch of things and a bunch of changes. The metaphor I like to use is you had rats in the house. You
Hmm.
wanted to get rid of the rats, but the solution they came up with was burning down the house with the family inside. So the rats just ran away, but you killed everything else. And
Right.
so it was in the pursuit of justice, you went, some people would say overboard. I would say, again, far more than that. It was, as an example, we have young men who had DNA proof that it wasn't them. They still were convicted and sent to prison.
So
So
what led us here? Will you like back up a little bit? So
oh,
before
sure,
we had all these issues, but then the military started putting in some like different procedures. So can we start there and like kind of what that looked like?
sure. So think back. I'm sure you recall the Me Too movement when
Hmm.
things were starting, and so there were a lot of people coming up. They were speaking to Congress, and there was a ton of pressure on the military. It was during President Obama's term, and so they basically held commanders accountable and said, "Look, we're going to take your authority away. We're going to look at you for promotion." In fact, I don't know if you're a football fan. It's like, but they looked at their records for sex assaults. So basically, if your record is not what they deem good, you won't get promoted. And they
Mm.
were looking at it. And so the pressure was to get prosecutions and convictions. The challenge is, well, what happens if the evidence doesn't support it? What happens if someone is incentivized? Is in many of our cases, there was contentious divorces, there were child custody cases. They had been invested by civilian law enforcement. And so basically, Congress came in and made all these changes to the military process, and they got more convictions, they got more prosecutions. The challenge is many of them were not right. So that's kind of what got us here. It started during the time of the Me Too movement and things like that, and then it snowballed.
And I feel like it always happens where they're like, we need all of this change right now, and you will all do it. And like, so in the military, it's such a drastic shift. And I don't like, I was just enlisted. So like down at the very bottom, we're like, what the heck's going on? We don't see all the stuff that happens up at the top. But it happens so quick and everything like today it's one way and tomorrow it's completely different.
And you know what it is, Danny? It's results. So if you think about, a political term limit,
Hmm.
it's they want to see change now. So the military is like, okay, you want it now, then you don't care if it's bad, and
Right.
so they will knee jerk react. Uh, and then the training also. So you mentioned at the lower ranks, it was to give your audience an idea. They were telling people that if you had one drink, if you were the person penetrated and you had one drink, you couldn't consent.
Right.
And I want you to think about that for a second. You go out for your birthday, your anniversary with your partner, and you have one drink, and then now they can't they can't consent. You're a rapist, and you go, wait a minute. You can drive legal in any state or territory, but you can't have one alcoholic beverage, and it's only one side. And
Well, and
so,
they don't uphold that all the way or all the time either. Like because sometimes you're like, "No, I was drunk." They're like, were you?"
right. So that's the thing is it's the winds will blow in the directions, and then once it happens, there's something called a conviction integrity unit or an innocence project. I don't know if your audience is aware of it, but from time to time you'll see someone who has been in prison and they come up and they go, "Hey, we never looked at this evidence. We're going to reverse their case." Is every state and territory has either an innocence project. That's a group that works with the prosecutors to look at cases to overturn them.
Hmm.
A conviction integrity unit, excuse me, or an innocence project, a nonprofit that does it, typically at the state level, except U.S. military. We were
Hmm.
not represented there. We don't get unanimous juries. They intentionally use small jury sizes. They call them panels. And then the other thing was, up until very recently, the commander that brought the charges got to pick the people that sat on it.
Mm.
So,
How many people are on these panels?
so prior to 2019, it could be as little as six. And
Hmm.
then in 2019, because of everything that was happening, they made it eight. And again, it's still not unanimous. It was two-thirds or 67% prior to 2019. And then 2019, it became three-fourths. But they
Hmm.
don't want to make it unanimous because the military wants their result.
Of course.
If they
Because
spend the money,
like in a regular trial, like a public trial, if you went to like a regular court,
mm-hmm,
all 12 jury members have to agree.
correct.
But you go to a military court and six out of the eight can say yes, maybe they were paid, maybe they're going to get a promotion if they say yes.
Right. And
Hmm.
it's remember the commander puts you on, and again, they fought. We fought to get randomization. Is
Yeah,
give someone the alpha roster that's not the commander and let them pick. We fought for unanimous. They don't want to do it because they know it's a tactic. And then there's also something called titling. Danny, your readers will be interested in this. If you get investigated, you get put in an FBI database that goes to all of the police agencies. And even if you're not even tried, it looks like you're convicted, and that's on your record for 40 years. You
hmm.
can't buy a weapon. You can't sponsor a spouse who's a foreign national, be a U.S. citizen. You can't work with children. You can't work with law enforcement. In many states, you can't get certifications for certain jobs and things like that.
Wow.
And some of your readers may have heard about, I think it's called GRAP, where it was a recruiting thing where people never even got notice and they found out they were titled. So you can be
Oh,
investigated in the military and it looked like you were convicted and you were never notified.
how is that even legal?
Well, again, most people, Danny, when you joined the military, did you know a lot about the law? Did anybody ever teach you anything?
They told me some things in boot camp. They were like, yeah, don't like these are some of the things that you can and cannot do. You'll get
Right,
UCMJ'd for X, Y, and
right.
Z, but they didn't go through everything. It was just like the big things.
And Danny, that's the challenge, is that they don't tell you many of these things. And so what we tell parents is here's some things you don't know. Here's some things your child definitely doesn't know. And we try and work with them to try and get protection. So I'll give you an example. I was talking to a mom recently who said, well, now under the new administration, they have announced that they're going to punish false accusers. I don't know if you saw the article in Task and Purpose.
I did. I didn't read it because I just
Okay.
didn't believe it. From the title, I was like, okay.
So here's the tricky part. So this mom comes to me. She said, "They're doing it now. They're doing it now." And I said, "Well, what you have to understand are the exceptions." I
Mm.
said, "Notice if you read the article, they don't mention sexual assault, sexual harassment, or domestic violence." And what I explained to her is, I'm going to tell you something crazy, Danny. When I had a black service member who worked for me who accused me of being prejudiced because he was black.
But you're
So,
black.
yes. So those are some of the false accusations as well. Here's why. I was auditing his work
Hmm.
and I found out he hadn't been doing something for about 2 years. I'd only been on the ship a week. And so he was going to be punished because he was the number one E5 on the ship prior to me getting.
Oh,
So the captain was like, this is impossible. And we had been inspected a couple of times. And how's the new guy get here a week and you find this? And I didn't believe it myself. I said, look, let me check. I said, they teach you to do like a small spot check. And then
yeah.
you start pulling the string and your sweater is gone now. And so the reason he filed those charges is because even though they were investigated, and my CO laughed. He says, Arvis, I've never seen this. You are the first. And I said, what's going on? He couldn't be punished even though I had proof that he had done wrongdoing. Because he had accused me, even though it was unsubstantiated, it was investigated, he could not be punished. So when I say false allegations in the military, it happens in other areas. So what I explained to that mom is when a recruiter tells you, hey, we're investigating false accusers now, ask, are there exceptions for sexual assault, DV, and sexual harassment? And so Danny, here's something crazy again that your listeners won't believe me. There are some people who believe if you look at them for too long, it's sexual harassment. You go to a gym and someone's got a tire on and you look at them for too long. I've spoken to some people who said that.
Hmm.
And so what I asked them, Danny, I said, okay, so you're in gym attire or whatever, sweats, is how many seconds can someone look at you? And I've heard a different answer each time.
Yeah, it's so subjective.
And so in the military, this was one of the last NDAA's National Defense Authorization Act that was signed by President Biden. It was in the military, you get 2 years in prison and a dishonorable discharge for sexual harassment. And again, someone looks at you too long and they believe they've been harassed. You tell an off-color joke in a closed door office and someone hears it outside, that's harassment too. So
Hmm.
Danny, you might be surprised that you might hear inappropriate language in the military. Did you ever hear any inappropriate language?
Once or twice, just
Once or
just
twice?
a couple times.
So think about. I want your audience to think about how comfortable you feel in the workplace when you might say "dang" or something more spicier than "dang," and someone is offended, and that becomes harassment. Is that something you want? Is that a workplace you want to work in? And so yes, it was that extreme reaction, and here are the results. And they want to hide. They don't want to acknowledge it
Of course.
because of perception. I
Yeah.
call it the 4 R's. If you impact the 4 R's, people they don't like you. Recruiting, retention, resources, that's the money, and reputation.
Hmm.
If you touch those four and you say this, and I'll share something else that again your audience will be surprised. We've actually had victims come to us because they work for groups where the VA was approving VA benefits with zero evidence, and you had groups coaching people how to get their claims approved with zero evidence.
Okay, so I come from the opposite side. I know you and I have had this conversation, and I get so fired up every time, like, because I am so angry. I had to fight for my VA benefits, and they told me you don't have PTSD because you didn't go to a combat zone. No, I was attacked, but
Right,
so I couldn't get like the full PTSD that they would give somebody that did go to a combat zone, which I'm not trying to take anything away from that. That is horrific as well. But
right,
PTSD is PTSD.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I
I get.
get like I had to fight for that, and you're telling me like I know this is not about that, and I'll probably take this part out because like I get so fired up.
You know what, Danny? You should be fired up. Is so we have somebody who came to us who worked for the physical examination board, and she shared a couple of anecdotal stories. It was someone had claimed that they had been assaulted in a location, and when she looked at her service check, she'd never been there.
Oh my
Wasn't
gosh.
allowed to raise that question. And then there was another one. She said someone claimed that they were catcalled one time when they walked past the barracks. There were no witnesses, and so they just and they got it. And
But
so
they
you
knew the person that did it?
they said they did not know. They just walked past the barrack, and someone came out the window and catcalled them one time.
Oh, so they got that like for VA disability.
Yes, they did get
Okay,
VA.
okay, okay. That's what I was misunderstanding that the person got falsely accused versus the VA disability. Okay.
Right. And so that's the crazy thing is you hear this stuff. Danny, I would say we even have an investigator who currently works for the VA, and that's how we found a lot of the stuff out. It's 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 a she, and she is an actual victim herself, a survivor. She could not investigate. Her hands were tied. She's like, oh my god, VA has an algorithm that will
Yeah.
pop, and they were not allowed to go after those who they know their system showed, hey, they falsely accused. And then you take that back and you look at the lives destroyed by it.
Yeah.
It's I had an active duty chaplain do an interview with us anonymously, and she talked about the suicide rate of service members who get falsely accused. Once they get notified, they do not believe that they'll get justice, and unfortunately, they harm themselves. So, or your audience members who think there's no hope, please reach out. There is hope. There are things we can do now that we could not do before.
Yeah.
And the scary part, Danny, is that with a new administration, things could swing. And so is that that's what's scary is that even though they're trying to right some things, it's someone new comes in, it goes right back to the other end of the extreme. And
Right.
there are people fighting for it. Um,
So, explain to me a couple of different things. I would love to know, or I'd love you to explain why would somebody falsely accuse somebody, and then also what it looks like how it destroys somebody's life when they are falsely accused. Just so,
okay.
because like I know, because I was in the military, but some of the people listening might not know.
Okay. So for your audience, think about this. Some of the reasons we found that someone might falsely accuse is the military would forgive what is it? They would forgive misconduct. So
Hmm.
let's say you're getting in trouble. Is once you become a victim, that trouble goes away. Let's say you wanted a new duty station. Let's say you're on a ship you want to get off. And we had this is a young lady was in the berthing area of a ship, and three ladies on the ship in the berthing area realized they had had sex with the same man on the ship. So they conspired to get off that ship by claiming victim status. So even though she heard them and reported it to her command management equal opportunity, her CMEO, her chain of command, the IG, and the JAGs, that young man was accused, convicted, and sent to prison.
No.
And then there's money. They were paying people. There were custody hearings. There were divorces that didn't go well. A case as an example to your audience is a young man finds out his wife is having an affair and she's pregnant.
Hmm.
So he files for divorce.
Yeah.
So they have a daughter together. Uh, and so what happens is he gets custody of the child. So think about a man getting custody and a custody of a daughter.
Yeah.
Then she files sexual assault charges against him. She goes to 2 police precincts. They all investigate and said nothing. This doesn't jive. They throw it out. She goes to the military. They immediately start the process. Her attorneys go to the young man and say, "Hey, look, if you give up custody of the daughter, I'll drop the charges." But
Are
he
you
believes in
kidding
the
me?
system. He believes in the system. You believe in the system.
Yeah.
So you go, "Hey, I will go to court." He goes to court. He loses. He goes to prison. She gets custody. But his mother is smart. She gets on the phone with the lover, the lover of the ex-wife now.
Yeah.
He admits that he took $10,000 and that he lied in military court. So for your audience, a civilian lying in military court, they don't have jurisdiction, so they're not punished. The military, and this was the Air Force case, they call a hearing because now they have to hear from him.
Yeah.
Danny, you're not going to believe this. He admits that it wasn't 10,000. That was one installment. He got $100,000 and he lied.
Oh my God.
The judge, you're listening there. You're like, well, wait a minute. They're going to at least give him a new trial. The judge says, I don't have the authority to do anything for you. So Danny, for your readers, I want them to think you're in a court. You think you're going to get treated fair. And the judge, why would you hold a hearing to hear evidence if you had no authority to do something based on the evidence?
Right. Like, what is the point of all of this?
Correct. So he goes to his congressperson and they change the story. They go, well, he did have the authority, but he uses discretion. And you can't question his discretion. So
Oh my
then
God.
something else, he files a suit. And then they go, okay, he submitted it too late. So you're like, wait a minute, but you had a hearing to hear
Right.
evidence that you say was submitted too late. Which one is it? So he files in federal court, and then they keep grinding it down.
Of course.
Unless you have unlimited money. So those are some of the reasons. It was cash payments. It was benefits. It was disputed custody
Where was he
agreement.
getting the money from? Like, who was
Who?
paying him? The
Oh,
lover.
the guy's ex-wife's mom paid him.
Oh, just like shut up and go away.
Um, to say certain things in court. Yes.
Hmm.
So it was things like that. And so that's why a lot of people do it. And then the impact.
Yeah.
Typically you go to prison, you lose your custody rights, you become lower than any part of society. You become a sex offender. You can't get jobs. You're underemployed if you're employed at all. We have a man who cleans chemical tanks, and the company he worked for did not use personal protective equipment that you're supposed to.
No.
But you're treated like scum.
Yeah.
Is every month in this country someone on the registry is killed, right? And so I'll share.
I didn't know that. I mean,
they are, because people get triggered and they're like,
I can see that.
like, are you going to care that someone got killed? Are you going to care that someone can't get a job, a certification? They can't travel outside the country and go to certain countries. And so the impact to your life is a lot of people feel demoralized, and unfortunately they end up homeless because where you live matters. And I'll share with your readers, I was convicted, falsely accused in about 2013. I was on the registry for 7 years and 10 months. And then the state of Virginia took me off when I started a petition with other members who've been falsely accused.
Did you appeal? Did you appeal your?
I did appeal. And so in my case, as an example, the same panel they picked came back during sentencing and said, we made a mistake. Can we revoke the verdict? But military rules don't allow it. We go, okay, give me a new trial. Oh, no, we don't want to do that.
Of course.
And my lawyer said, so let me back up. The panel said we want to revoke the verdict because my accuser made an inconsistent statement. You can't say somebody lied. You can say it's an inconsistent statement. The judge goes, she's been making inconsistent statements the entire time. But they were like, that's the straw. And so that's what happened there. So the state of Virginia, when they reviewed my case after I'd been on the registry, they were afraid I was going to sue them because the person explained to me, my lawyer asked, hey, did he use any threats? She said, no. Did he use any force? No. Did he coerce you? So one of the elements is force. Oh, and she
Hmm.
came back a second time. So it was like, wait a minute, you came back a second time. You didn't scream. There was no threats. So if there was no, there can be no force. If there was no force, and so that's what they were afraid of. So they took me off the registry. And the unique part of that is in Virginia, you had to be on 15 years,
Hmm.
and you had to go to court. Is I was one of the first people. I didn't have to go to court. They reviewed and they just took me off. And the appellate courts were compromised as well. Like it was, even though we got letters from the panel saying, hey, look, we made a mistake. We want to, is the appellate court, the Navy Court of Appeals said, oh, that's like saying the check is in the mail. Just because they said it doesn't mean they mean it. So they said they sent it. The judge actually tried to persuade them not to do it. She issued an illegal order. The convening authority, one star admiral, said nothing was submitted. So the appellate court did say, well, look again. And Danny, you'll be surprised they found them,
Mm.
right? Hey, we found them, but we're not going to change anything. And my lawyer was sharing with me, it was like,
Is it because they needed that check in the box, like we got a conviction?
correct, Danny. That's where all of this is. For your readers, it's you need a conviction to satisfy Congress. You need to show a prosecution and a conviction. And to make your listeners even more, excited, I filed a civil suit against the government, but not me. So I was grateful, but I'm like, well, why wouldn't you file it against me if you said I did it?
Right.
And my lawyer said, because you said her motive is money. She wants money. Is that you would get to see how much she's asking for. The military refused to turn that figure over.
Of
They
course.
said, all you can do is say we're in negotiations. And then a little birdie was like, Arvis, they had to get a conviction in order for her to get paid. And so that's another reason why they didn't want to do a new trial, because I would get to use all of those inconsistent statements.
Was
And
she a civilian or was she a
she's
military
civilian.
member?
She's a civilian,
Okay.
government civilian. And so in many of these cases, you see that stuff play out and you go, well, wow. It's we have one young lady who she has falsely accused 3 service members. If she gets 2 more, she's an ace.
Oh,
And
gross.
she won. And so, and that's the crazy part. It's you think it's going to be fair, and then they don't want to acknowledge it.
What kind of satisfaction do you get by accusing people falsely of, I mean, I don't know if it was sexual assault,
Right,
harassment.
right, or DV, yeah,
Yeah.
all 3. So I think it's you get to be part of a group where I'm a victim. It's you get to justify anything you did that you didn't want to do, right?
Who wants to be a victim? Why is that fun? Why are we like making that such a great
Well,
thing now?
okay. So I'll give you an example. Another one. It was two male service members had sex with one female service member. And so they had sex, they had a good time. Well, then the information gets out, right?
Hmm.
And so, people aren't upset, or they are upset rather that it got out.
Right.
So then now, hey, it's rape. I was raped. Now, Danny, they recorded it secretly.
Oh,
They did. So now,
which I think that's illegal.
well, it depends on the state. So you have one
Right.
party and 2 party states.
Right.
They were in a 2 party state. So you're right. In the state they were in, it was illegal. Is you have to notify all parties that you're taping. So they present the evidence. So they drop the rape charges because based on the video, it's not rape, but they got indecent acts, Article 134, because in the military, you're not supposed to have sex with more than one person at a time, and somebody's not supposed to look. So
I
both
didn't know
of
that was a thing. I had no idea.
that's what I'm saying is people don't know the law. And if you ask questions, you have to understand things. And so they both got convicted, sent to prison, and because she was a victim, nothing happened. Even though
Oh my
technically
gosh.
that would apply to her too. So think about it. You're right. It was illegal for them to take the video, but if they didn't have the recording, they
Right.
would have been convicted of rape. Another one like that. This was an Army case in Kentucky. He goes out with another service member. They have a night of drinking. Now he's married and she knows it. So, she does what she does. She goes to civilian police in Kentucky. Danny, he doesn't even get a lawyer. The police come, he gives a statement voluntarily. They bring her in, and she admits on video that she's about to get kicked out for PFT failures.
Oh yeah.
So, but once she's a victim, that goes away.
Are you serious?
Hold on. So CID is an Army case. CID is in the room with the recording where she admits that it was consensual, but she's about to get kicked out. So guess what the Kentucky police do? They drop
What?
the charges. They're like, wait, you admitted it was consensual. So he goes on about his career.
Yeah.
1 year later, the Army brings back the exact same charges against that accuser. And guess what they do differently? So wait, let me back up. He goes to his attorney who looks at the tape and looks at the and says, if I don't win this case, you don't have to pay me, because he sees the evidence.
Right. Absolutely.
What the military does is you can't use the recording and the CID agent can't testify.
How is that legal?
Danny, when you're trying to get convictions, that's what people don't understand. He went to prison, and if I'm getting this right, his several of his relatives died while he was in prison.
Oh my gosh.
And so you think that the system will treat you fairly. You think if the system makes a mistake, it'll correct it. You will be surprised. And I think one of the big things we talk about is you understand doubt, you understand belief, but you also understand evidence. And that's what you want. You just want a fair process where they're going to look at it and they're going to balance the scales.
Right.
So those are some examples of what we've seen, why they make the false allegation, and then the impact it has to the service member. And I'll share another impact that most people don't think about is these men have PTSD. They can't date anyone.
Right.
Think about it. Is most people, they're finding
don't trust anyone.
They find them on dating sites. You're a sex man. You can't be on a dating site.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, think about the liability, right?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know anything about. I didn't meet my husband on a dating site, so I don't know about them.
All right, and then here's the other thing you don't think about is they're scared that this could happen again.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a young man, I had an interview for him, and it was a woman who interviewed him in person, and he was shrinking back. And then I thought, because I was with him virtually on the interview, and I said, "Oh my God, he does. I know the woman, but he does not." And so he was so afraid, and so he really had a bad time with the interview. And I had to explain to her later. I said, "Look, he's a really good guy." I said, "But he's scared to be alone with a woman now, who's not related to."
Yeah.
And with his story, really quickly, his wife he thought was having an affair. He was deployed to a war zone, Afghanistan. His command lets him come back because his mind is not in the game. He could get killed. He could get other people killed.
Absolutely.
Danny, ding, ding, ding. She is having an affair.
Mm.
She gets mad. She leaves him with the kids, goes with the other guy, another Air Force member. He dumps her. Then she comes back. They move out of the house. They're going to come together. And then he starts to suspect she's having another affair with another service member.
Oh my gosh.
So he installs a still camera in their bedroom. Like, it's motion activated
pictures.
And guess what he finds, Danny? It's another, and he's still willing to stay with her. He wants to work on their marriage.
What a guy.
Look,
I would leave. I would run.
She leaves him. She's now married to that other guy now. They both retired honorably. And then she files what is it? It's the peeping Tom. It's the voyeur rule. So you know how people will put cameras in showers or bathrooms?
Yeah.
So she knows the legal process, and she claims that he put the camera in their marital bedroom for sexual gratification. Okay. So it goes to court-martial. He's not allowed to use the defense that she was having an affair. In fact, she testified. They let the panel get out, and she said, "Yeah, I was having one." So it was. And when I met this young man, Danny, he didn't even want to come forward. He's very conservative. He's like, "Arvis, I did it. I did put the camera in there." And I said, "Did you do it for sexual gratification or to find out if your wife was cheating?" He goes, "To find out if she was cheating." I said, "So you weren't allowed to present that evidence, even though the military knew. They argued that you did it for gratification." And I would tell you, his panel came back to him later and said, "Based on the judge's instructions, we had to send you to prison." Because going back to what you said is, It was he was in a single party state, but
Okay.
because he wasn't a part to the sexual encounter, that it was illegal. So he
Oh,
maybe would have went to NJP under normal
yeah.
circumstances, but he went to prison. He's on the sex offender register, the whole nine, when they knew, but they wanted to get that conviction. And
But
so,
I think what most people don't realize is that adultery is against the rules in the military. Like you can, it's hard to
Danny,
prove, but it's against the rules. So
so
if she's in the military, she could
but
get in
Danny,
trouble for that.
once she became a victim, it got
Right.
washed away. And
Of
so
course.
those are some of the cases. Is that they got we had a helicopter found out a helicopter pilot found out his wife was cheating with someone else, an enlisted member. She was an officer, and he was ready to divorce her for it. And then she accused him, right? Because once you become a victim, you make that is your misconduct is washed away. So remember, we talked about, well, why would someone want to be this? Because your sins are forgiven. So
Well,
the
I've always heard it like the other way around. Basically, somebody's cheating and they accuse the person that they're cheating with as like of rape, not their spouse of rape.
but you can do either one though, or
That's
both.
crazy to me.
And so when you see this, it's like, Arvis, you got to be kidding me. And I
Yeah.
go, well, no. And another one, a guy's at a party, soldier at a party. He is in bed with a young lady and her best friend, but it's not a menage a trois.
Okay.
And she is on top of him, Danny, cowgirl style. And so when she gets close to climaxing, the best friend decides to leave the room. I don't know why that's a thing, why you would be in there for that.
Right.
Now, admittedly, he was trying to get the other girl to participate, but she was like, no. Two people tried to enter the room, and the woman on top, the cowgirl, she sends them away. She was engaged to be married to another soldier. So 6 months
Oh.
down the road, he finds out she claims I was raped, but she doesn't want to press charges. The man goes, I'm not going to marry you if you don't press charges against your rapist, if you were really raped.
Right. Like
She,
prove it.
press, she presses charges. That man was convicted and sent to prison. And so certain people who were at the party were not allowed to testify in his defense. The best friend wasn't allowed to testify. And so his lawyer is like, wait a minute, you were on top. Your best friend was in the room, in the bed with you. Did well, and in her statement, it was, yeah, she didn't look distressed. She looked like she was having a really good time. She was doing all the things I would expect her to do.
Right.
And she was on top. The lawyer asked her, was he restricting you from standing up? No, he was convicted of rape. And so you tell these people these cases and they go, Arvis, you're kidding. I'm like, I'm not. He says, I get it. You don't want to believe it. I said, let's look. Let's first go to the VA and find out, were you approving, how many cases you approve with zero evidence, right?
Right.
And let's back those up and look at the people's lives who were impacted when you did so. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, look, you don't believe me? That's fine. Let's look. But here's the thing is, Danny, how can you trust the military again once you know that's true, right?
You
I said,
don't.
what if you knew I was right with 100% certainty? I want your audience to think that. Imagine you know with 100% certainty everything I'm telling you. You've seen it, you believe it. It's, are you ever going to support your son or daughter joining the military if you don't know they're going to be treated fairly?
Well, they're
And
not likely.
that's the hard part. It's and let me say this as well. I love the military, right? I do love our country. I love the military. I want them to do the right thing. And so that's why we do this. Is because you want your country to be strong. You want your military to be strong, and you know that they will not be strong if they
Right.
treat people this way, unjustly, unfairly.
This is probably one of their biggest concerns when they started allowing women in the military. Not that this wasn't happening outside of the military, but I feel like that was maybe one of the concerns.
Right? In
Like,
fact, yeah, no, I think you're right. And then you think about combat zones and
yeah.
kind of that nature, and so it's how do you balance the scales? How do you especially with the alcohol situation. It's, someone has one drink. In fact, I have a video that I'll share with you if you want, where I was going to a defense advisory committee meeting. So they were going to military bases and talking to service members, junior, mid-level, senior. And they were finally having the courage to complain about false accusations. And
Good.
so a member of the panel said this: well, no, they're not false accusations. It's a problem with training, because they've been trained if one person has one drink, the person penetrated, they can't consent. So those people are like, well, I had one drink. I couldn't consent. Therefore, I was raped. So I have that video. And another one where an attorney talks about the day before trial, like he's getting ready to go to trial with this service member, and then they're trying to offer him a deal, and he's like, no. And then the day before trial, they give him, the lawyer, evidence that the person has mental health issues, and they're seeking it because they falsely accuse men and they want help. But the military knew that, held it till the last day because they wanted to get this guy to take a deal, and then they dropped the case.
Good thing he didn't take a deal.
He didn't take a deal. But Danny, it's hard not to take a deal
Yeah.
because you're facing 30 years in prison. And so you're like 2 years or 30. It's,
Right.
the deck is stacked against you. So I have a lot of young men who do it. They just take the deal and they go, well, I'll never see my mom again. I'm 20. I'll be 55 years old when I get out. And in prison, how they treat them is inhumane as well. That's a complete different episode. But it's people don't understand. And I'll tell you this, with the MST survivors that I recently started working with, is they were looking at the appellate briefs that we send to the appellate courts,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought that was it. And I go, no, you have a complete record of trial, which is like 2,000 or so pages, and there's exhibits. And so I go, well, there's this, but it's not here. So this is the one the military puts online,
Of
and this is
course.
the one you don't see. And so I go, but I'm willing to work with you if you want. And they also, I call them fishing expeditions, is once one person accuses you and they know the case is very questionable, they will talk to everyone to see if anybody else will. And then they will try and offer incentives. I recently found out from a military special agent who's retired now that I thought, well, they had to be found guilty for them to get classified as, and they said no. If it goes to court martial, they get the victim's benefit. They get the money, they get the insurance, they get all of the bells and whistles that come with it.
I didn't know there was money for being a victim.
Yes, there is. There is money, insurance benefits, and other things. And most people don't, Danny. And so you talk about certain people and they feel desperate and they're like, hey, I can get the base I want. I can get out of trouble. I can get custody. I can get my husband back for leaving me. I can get more of our shared assets. I can get VA benefits for the rest of my life. I can get this. And they even help with job placement. We got a call from a company who saw some of the podcasts we were doing. They hired a person who was a survivor from the military, and she had accused two men of sexual assault at the new job that she's working for. And so they said, hey, what do we do?
Right.
Because they saw the show. And we go, well, do you have video? And they go, we do. They have videos in the copier room, Danny, like everywhere.
Perfect. Yeah.
They got it with audio.
Perfect.
They find out she falsely accused both men. She falsely accused both men. They have the audio. They have the video.
So then do they take her to court? This is a civilian, right?
She's a civilian now, right? Because she's out of the military. No, they do not. They quietly fire her, and that's it. There is no punishment other than that.
Why?
So,
Why can't we take them to court? And like, you should get the same punishment that you would have, had they actually. Oh my God.
Danny, because you have advocates who fight for that. What they believe is that if you punish the false accusers, then true victims won't come forward.
That's not true.
I agree, Danny. I agree with you. Look, you're right. But that's what they argue to politicians. So what they do is they deflate the number. They said, well, it's only 2%. So I asked them, how do you know it's 2%? How did you get that? They won't answer. So when I was falsely accused, they said it was 2%. And then a few years later, they said, okay, it's 2 to 5%. Then a few years later, they said, okay, it's 2 to 10. But they've anchored people to that 2% that they've never had to prove. There was a military study done that 40% of the sexual assault cases had zero probable cause.
Oh my God.
Let's explain that for your audience. The police need probable cause to stop you,
Yep.
need probable cause to arrest you. They need probable cause to hold you, to try you in court. And the cases without it get dismissed. 40%. That's not two. And look, the majority are still legit. It's 60%. But 40%, Danny, is a lot bigger than two.
That's huge. That's huge.
They did two snapshots. One was 40%, one was 35%. And so you go, hey, let's look at those, right? Not the 60. Let's look at the 40% and the 35 in those two snapshots. And Danny, most people don't know. Pardon me. And if you tell them, they immediately won't believe you.
Yeah.
I go, pretend for a second I'm true. I said, we want an investigation. We want an investigation to start here. I said, but when you see the evidence, I want you to act on it. And I want you to go back and let's do something. So let me just tell your audience how that happened too.
Yeah.
It was, you have a political group who wants to appeal to women. So there was a Believe Women hashtag campaign. I don't know if you remember that around the Me
Yeah.
Too.
Yep.
So it was Believe Women, not believe evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I always ask, what happens if a woman accuses another woman? Which woman do you believe? And then someone, you believe the evidence. I said, so think about it. It was Believe Women. So you had a political party that believed if we give women reproductive rights, if we say we believe you no matter what and we get results, then you'll vote for us. And so, Danny, most people don't understand this. More women vote in every category compared to men except one. With 4-year degrees, it's the same. But in every other category, women vote much more than men. And so I believe this was an attempt to draw in that vote, right? They also did a bunch of Title IX things, and it happened at colleges and universities too. So that's where it came from. It was, you had these hashtags, you had these people, I believe, who said we can get votes by supporting strongly.
Right.
And let's start in the military and then work our way out. And so that's where it comes from, according to me, according to my thoughts.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Look, I have a letter too, actually. One was from the 3-star at that time. He was the vice chair of the Joint Chiefs. He sends a letter to a senator saying, we are getting convictions in cases that civilian law enforcement won't take. But Danny, you know what he didn't say? How are you getting convictions in cases that civilian law enforcement won't take? So I have that letter. I have a letter from a law school. They saw a show called Justice, and you can Google this, Justice is No Longer Blind in the Military. They said, look, we looked. You're right. I'm like, wow, thanks for sending this. I'll share it. We had an affidavit it was a Navy SEAL, Keith Berry, who was falsely accused, where after his 2-star Navy admiral retired, wrote an affidavit and said, I was scared because he thought President Obama and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand would come after him and the Navy because of all of the high-profile cases and the pressure. We have that. He also implicated the head JAG of the Navy and her deputy, who replaced her as head JAG, who told him, don't upset the findings in this case, even though the evidence didn't add up. So after he retired, he wrote an affidavit, and that case was shifted to the Air Force. They overturned it. But here's what people don't know. He was like, Arvis, you should have heard the stuff. They were throwing each other on the bus, the two heads of the JAG Corps. He says, you need to get a copy and alert the public. The military sealed it.
Of course they did.
So we can't get it.
Yep.
No other cases that they touched were investigated beside that one. But here's the thing most people don't get with him. Remember I told you he was titled?
Yeah.
Look, there's certain countries he still can't go into. You know how you fill out those immigration cards when you go to visit a country?
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions was, were you ever convicted of a felony? What does he put on that?
Yes.
Yes, but yes. Okay, now you have to explain it. Who wants someone convicted of these things to come to their country?
Nobody.
So you bought the ticket. You got the resort. You got your little island outfit out. You're ready to go. And they're like, no, you have to go home. And his case was overturned. So for the rest of his life, he's marked.
Can you get untitled?
Yes. That 2023 is when they finally made a process.
Okay.
Ask me what percentage of people were successful.
1%.
Not 9%, a little bit better
No.
than that.
Okay, well that's
And,
good.
and,
Yeah,
and they had to get attorneys. And
of course.
they don't make it easy. It's not automatic. We have a gentleman, he was E4 Army. He was accused. He was found not guilty of all charges. He lives in New York City. Then he applied for 64 jobs. He got 0 interviews. So his dad, we did some background investigation. He's still titled. So he can't even get a job, and he was found not guilty. He was honorably discharged, but because he was investigated.
Yeah.
And I recently did an interview with some Air Force Special Forces guys, and they were telling me about the training they went to, red light, green light, where if you didn't answer the training correct, they would call you a predator in
What?
his training. And he called in what he thought was a sexual assault situation, and they still marked him because of the investigation, and he didn't find out until he had trouble picking up his child from school. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
it's
That would be awful. Can you imagine? You go to pick up your
Danny,
kid. Oh my God.
Danny, I can because I couldn't go to schools, right? I could look. I couldn't go to schools
Are you
until
untitled?
I'm still titled, but it
Mm.
was like it's on military bases. That's where his child was going.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. But that's the thing I tell people is you don't realize how it impacts your life in every aspect. And you get reminders, you can't go to Disney World, right? You
Yeah, because
can't
there's
go to
kids
Disney
there.
World. You can't go to theme parks because there's kids there. So I got a guy calling me crying because he has to explain to his daughter. The class voted for him because he sends a lot of things to the school via his wife. He can't go on the field trip. The little kids are like, we want your dad to go on the field trip. And he is crying because he can't go. And so he's like, what lie do I tell my daughter? Because I can't tell her the truth. And
Right. Like how do you? Yeah.
Danny, I'm emotional thinking about it.
Me too.
I didn't even think about it. I was like, look, he can't go to a theme park. He can't he can't be a parent. And he begged his wife to take off work to go. And he had to lie to her. Daddy doesn't feel good. And he was like, Arvis, I'm sick to my stomach. I tell her not to lie, but that's the impact. Another man, he gets his case overturned. He's driving cross country on a motorcycle. Don't ask me why my butt would hurt after a while, but he does. He tries to get on a military base. He's still titled. They won't let him on, even though his case has been overturned. It takes him 4 hours, even though he's got a retired ID to get on. Then he goes to a gun shop in California. They kick him out and said, look, you're titled. They called it something else, though.
Right.
And they kick him out and said, we're going to call the police. So they're still fighting this
Yeah.
stuff. And so you tell people, and they go, Arvis, you're crazy. You expect justice. The military couldn't be like this. Danny, this is the worst and biggest military justice scandal in the history of the U.S. military. Ask me why.
Why?
Because of the levels. We're talking about President Obama, President Biden. We're talking about members of Congress and the Senate. We're talking about generals and admirals. And we're talking about an entire group of people targeted, prosecuted, and washed away.
So you didn't include President Trump in that. So what is different between I'm gonna just label it like the Democrats and the Republicans when it comes
Okay,
to
that's
like
fine.
the
That's fine.
president?
So here's the thing: is we believe President Trump is slowly making some changes to that.
Okay.
So I'm going to use the colleges and universities.
Okay.
So President Obama wrote what's called a Dear Colleague letter. So at colleges and universities, if the police would not investigate a sexual assault or something like that, they have an administrative process. So here's what they did. He basically said, if you don't change your process, you won't get funding. So one side gets an attorney, one side doesn't. One side gets all the evidence, and then the other side doesn't get to see it. The person who investigated gets to decide the case. So that's what they did. So you had young men in colleges who were being kicked out because of this. President Trump comes into office. Betsy DeVos, who is his Secretary of Education, all she does is balances it. If you give this side an attorney, you got to give this side.
Absolutely.
They get access to all the evidence. They also, Under the old system, they couldn't even cross-examine this person, but now they do. And then guess what? The lawsuits went down.
Because if somebody has actually raped somebody, you're going to figure that out. And if somebody has not, you're also going to figure that out. Like that's the whole point.
So he balanced the scale during his first administration. So what do you think happened when President Biden came back?
Yeah,
He
untipped
did it.
it.
So President Trump comes back in office. He balanced it again. A Democrat comes back into office. What are they going to do? Nobody touched the military because we couldn't get his attention. So the Democrats saw the podcast. They saw it. In Biden's administration, we got to Kathleen Hicks. And I'm saying her by name. Kathleen Hicks was the number 2 at DOD. She was a Deputy Secretary of Defense. She saw our podcast. She promised to investigate false accusations and release the report. She talked to a man. His name is Mr. James Thomas. He has a show called Tell It Like It Is. Her secretary called him. Like, we got the phone records. What happens? So she does the investigation, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. And then she wouldn't take our calls. And then she didn't. So Danny, look, we don't know what it says. And then we're told the report is classified or restricted.
Oh.
So we're like, wait a minute. You said you would do it. You did it. You said you would release it. So Danny, my question for your audience is, if it supported what they believed, why would they classify it and not release it? Why wouldn't they even tell us what it says? And she ghosted us. And we heard, so from the Democratic administration, we heard feedback. I'm not sure it rose to President Trump that it got his attention. I think this cycle, it's starting to.
Okay.
And so he's been making some changes. Like I said, it was the fact that the military finally said, we're going to go after false accusers. Think about that. No one has done that ever.
Yeah.
And then I looked in the article. I'm like, okay, they're talking about like false accusations of being racist and other things. I said, but I don't see anything about sexual assault, DV.
So I have a question.
What do you got?
It's totally hypothetical. So kind of go on this ride with me. So let's say, here we go. So let's say that you are falsely accused by a white woman. This is really important. She has to be white, and you're a black man. Can you then like accuse her of basically being prejudiced against you for being black? And then now you're both victims. So then the slate's clean?
In the military, no, because it's the first wolf to the sled. It's the first.
Okay.
Wow. So here's the thing, Danny, as an example. So my false accuser is a white woman.
Okay.
What do you think the panel that the convening authority?
White women.
It was all white men.
Oh, white men. Yeah.
And 3 of them had daughters the same age as my accuser.
Of course.
So that's what my attorney said. I said, well, can they do this legally? And I tell my friends who are white, I said, imagine if a black person accused you of something, but the whole jury panel is black. Do you think you'd be treated fairly? No. And so as a civilian, they can't do that, but the military has an exemption and they can. And so, because I said, well, can they do this?
Of course.
Yeah, they can. But think about it. Even that panel who heard the evidence, I was charged with 7 counts of sexual assault. They found me not guilty of 6. And the 7th one, they asked to revote. And then on top of that, failing to follow a general order, Danny, they didn't even have a copy of the general order they found me guilty of. They didn't have a copy.
And like, it was a general order. Don't remember which one.
And then the judge even said, we have a problem because there's no evidence he broke it. Because his accuser didn't say he broke it, and he didn't say he broke it. And then
which general order was it?
I don't even remember, but it's in my. I can look it up. And so, conduct unbecoming, soliciting someone other than your wife. I am married, and so that they sent. I was facing 30 years in prison. They gave me 0 jail time, but I got a dishonorable discharge, a dismissal for officers, and I was forced to immediately register as a sex offender.
Ugh.
And then some of them wrote and said, "Look, this guy didn't do it. We made a mistake." And what my lawyer told me is, he said, Arvis, they picked the most biased jury they could, and they had trouble convicting you. They don't want to give you round 2.
No,
and then
because you'll get free.
And then I testified in my own defense, and that's unusual.
Right.
You watch these shows, and I always would wonder, why don't people testify? And you get it because the prosecution will try and trap you with a falsehood. That's why. But I still stood up there. I said, look, they have to hear from me. And the first thing they asked is, why would she do this? I said, look, I think it's monetary. I think she wanted more than this. And I said some things, and all she said is, I can't remember. I can't. That's a catch-all. Is
Hmm.
they were, they didn't use experts in mind, but in many of the cases, no matter what the behavior was, they would bring an expert to explain it away. Well, people's memories are this, and that's how bad it was when it came to getting convictions. And so there was a TikTok video where she was an Air Force veteran. Hopefully, I could find it again. She said that she knew men in the military who would make a report against the military women they would go out on dates with for protection. So that way she couldn't make a report on them. So I thought about that when you said the racist thing. So there's something called a restricted report and unrestricted. Do you
Yep.
know the difference?
Yeah.
So they would make a restricted report, which means there's no investigation. It's just on file. And they did it as a form of protection. So this was an Air Force veteran female who did a TikTok on that. And I'm like, wow. Like
That's
that
wild. That's
is that
crazy that you feel like you have to go to that extreme to protect yourself.
oh, and I will use an LGBTQIA plus member who came to me. So she identifies as bisexual. She had a friend who identifies as lesbian who hooked up with a male member that she thought was attractive, right?
Yeah.
Her LGBTQI friends teased her about it. Like, I guess you lose your lesbian league card or something. I don't know. And so she accused him of rape.
Oh
And
my
he
God.
and the person who came to me said, look, I went to her and said, look, he didn't. You said he didn't, but it's think about it. You feel bad, but once you're a victim, well, then it explains everything away. You're not responsible for your actions. In fact, Danny, I tell people when you say equal rights, do you also mean equal responsibility, equal accountability, right? Do you mean that? Do you mean equal punishment? And so,
No.
well, and that's the challenge. It's there is no real punishment. There was a case in Pennsylvania. You may have heard it finished adjudicating in June of this year. So they're both National Guard.
Hmm.
One's a doctor, one's a junior enlisted. Well, they got on a date, they hook up in a car. And I think it was in a park, like a national park. So the police come and maybe they get a citation or something like that. So not a huge deal on that side, but the guard finds out and now they want to process them for fraternization.
Of course.
What do you think she did?
She accused him of rape.
He accused him of rape. So she accuses him of rape, and he quickly resigns from the guard because he doesn't want to be prosecuted by them.
That's
The
smart.
It's in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania police investigate, and do you know what saved him?
What?
She videotaped the on her phone, and she shared it with her friends, bragging about the encounter, and set up another encounter with it.
Why, why are so many people recording this? Like, firstly.
So Danny, here's the sad part. I get asked all the time, Arvis, how do you protect yourself? I say a video camera 360 with audio. And people laugh. They think, oh, you're joking. I said, well, I just told you about the case where the two members, they shouldn't have took the video, but if they hadn't, they'd have been convicted of rape.
Right.
Instead, they were convicted of indecent acts because a third party saw the sex. So a camera in this case and her text messages saved them. They dropped charges.
Good.
So
Good.
what do you think her punishment was?
Oh, she didn't get a punishment.
No. She got a whole 30 days in jail
Oh.
and 20 some 22, 23 months, I believe, of probation.
Well,
That
at
was her.
least she got something.
That's something, but compared to what he would have got,
Right. It's nothing compared to what he
he,
would have
he's
gotten.
he's kicked out of the guard. He doesn't get he resigned rather. He doesn't get any victim status because he was falsely accused. His life is ruined. He got death threats.
No.
My understanding is no death threats for her, but is his life is still in jeopardy, and that adjudicated this last June, where it finally came out, and it was look, we had the evidence, and people pressured the prosecutor. They were like, get him, get him, get him. We got video, her
Yeah.
video. And I was talking to an advocate. I said, what if she didn't do the video? Like, what if she hadn't recorded it? What if she didn't share it with her friends on a group chat and highlight his prowess? What would have happened? So Danny, like I said, that was this was this June.
Actually, so now talking to you and thinking about all this, we had a case when I was in Because like I went, they kicked me out of my command eventually because they were like, "You're too messed up. You can't fly anymore. Get out of here." Um, so I went to this like other command. At that
Right.
command was an officer from our command who had also been kicked out. And her and I got to talking, and she's like, "No, I was falsely accused by a junior enlisted male of raping him." And I was like, "What? Like that doesn't even make any sense." I did not believe her. Literally, to like, never believed her. I was like, "Why would first? Why would he do that?"
Right. Well, and that's, I have worked with one woman who was falsely accused, and as we worked through the process, she was the victim. Right. It was,
Yeah.
she was seeing someone else, and her ex, who was also in the military, accused her, falsely accused her. So it
Oh my
was to
gosh.
get back at her. And so it's, Danny, I hate to say this to your audience, but some people are petty. And
Oh
some
yeah.
people, they use the system to get back at people, to use it to weaponize. Um, and again, I want to bring people's attention is the false accusations happened in many categories. I told you about the racist thing. It was with me and my CO laughing, going, and I go, it's not funny. Like, and then I found out you couldn't punish the bad behavior because once you make that accusation, they put you in a victim status. So you hear me say accuser a lot.
Yeah.
It's because once they make the accusation, they automatically label that person as a victim. They all get all rights, responsibility. And again, I found out from a retired, he was security forces in the Air Force. It was, you don't even have to win the case. It just has to go to court martial. And then you are victim status, and then you turn that to survivor, I guess, whenever you feel comfortable. And it's just like you saw with the female officer. It's something you can use as a weapon. And then if you're failing, you're having issues, all of that's forgiven now because you wear that cape. And so that's what most people don't, they don't know, and they won't take the time to listen. So I want to thank your audience for hanging with us, taking the time to listen, to understand, and going, okay, I'm calling, let's do an investigation here. Let us
Yeah.
start here. Let's do this. And they don't want to do that because, again, I want them, what would they feel if they saw it? What do you feel if you saw the proof? You knew it would, is now we've had recruiting issues, right?
Yeah.
So in 2024, for the 2025 NDA, both the House and the Senate had parts of their bill where they wanted you to automatically enroll in selective service if you were 18 to 25.
Hmm.
The House was just males only. The Senate was males and females. So the House had a problem. We don't want the females in it. It didn't get signed, so it didn't get approved. But that's where we were headed. It's, if you don't think you're getting treated fairly, then people aren't going to volunteer. And if they're not going to volunteer and you need to get them in the military, how do you do that? You make it mandatory. And I want to be clear with your audience, selective service is not a draft, but it's the tool that they use to draft. When you
Right.
register, that's the pool. They go, you. So that's what we're talking about is, if the American public, if you lose confidence in what the military is doing and you don't join, that's a problem. Because we always use our military, so we need people to join and stay in so we can use them
Right.
to do the mission.
I agree, and I think that if women want equal rights, and I've seen both sides of it. As a female, I get it. If you want equal rights, then you have to do equally the amount of work. So if men have to sign up for selective service when they turn 18, women should too. Like you want equal rights, then let's do it.
Right? And
Otherwise, like you have to understand that men do things that we don't, but we do things that men don't. Men can't have babies. So okay, not the point. The point is, what do we do? We know all this information. We know that people are being falsely accused. Now what?
so again, for your audience, we want an investigation, right? I get it. You're like, oh, I hear what you're saying. So I think you start with the VA. You look at, hey, were you approving claims with zero evidence, even though your algorithm showed that there was issues? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, how many cases? Okay, now let's rewind that back and look. You did a snapshot. It was a 1 year snapshot, and it was 40%. Well, what was it all these other years
Hmm.
when this movement was alive? And then let's look at these cases and create a conviction integrity unit to reverse them. That's
Yeah.
one. Let's put 12 people on a panel.
Yeah.
Let's make it unanimous. Let's make it so that if a lawyer does something illegal, which we've seen, you can go after their bar license. You can file a complaint. That doesn't happen very often. Let's change the laws to make them fair. There's something called the good soldier defense. So one of the laws they changed is you can't say anything good about yourself or people, good soldier defense, until after you're convicted or sentencing. But the accuser can have people to say good things about them.
That's so backward, like not backwards, but just
I'll,
uneven.
I'll give you an example. This was an Air Force case. It was his daughter. His daughter accused him. So his daughter had falsely accused 5 other family members, all civilians. The civilian police investigated and said, nope, 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 nope. Then she falsely accused her father. He was imposing curfews and things like that. He got found guilty. He could not present the evidence because it was deemed a good soldier defense. He's an airman in this case, even though he had 5 members falsely accused, to come forward and said he's a good guy. Danny, this guy has never gotten a
That's
parking
wild.
ticket, never a speed. He's an altar boy, and he's like, wait a minute, I can't use anyone to speak about my character until sentencing. After I get that was a law that was changed because it was persuading people. It was
Yeah.
at the time you couldn't get mental health records, and then there was a case file where you can get them, and they want to reverse that back. And here's what I tell your audience, Danny. Look, I'm not saying just because someone has mental health issues, they will falsely accuse. But from what I've seen, the sub pool of people who falsely accuse tend to have mental health issues. And in a lot of the cases, they mixed alcohol with prescription medication.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? The man didn't know that, right?
Right.
So, in fact, there was one case where what did she take? What's the sleep medic? Is it Ambien? What's the sleep medication?
Ambien is one of them. Yeah.
It's the one where you sleepwalk sometimes.
Oh, yeah. That's Ambien because you can become a
So, so,
zombie.
so she slept walked into his room and engaged in sexual activity, and he was convicted. And he was like, so it's wait a minute. Look, you took an Ambien. You came in, you did some stuff. I thought guilty, and I go, do you think that's guilty? Right? Do you think, hey, yeah, I took an Ambien. He didn't know I took an Ambien. I
But
went,
he was unaware of the situation.
Danny. That's the thing I say. That like the cases that are close. So look, I'm not talking about that.
Right.
It you look at it and you're like, wow. So then it's what kind of pressure was on you? And Danny, I will tell you, we've had senior military leaders contact us privately who are active duty right now, generals who've said, look, you're right, but they're afraid. Danny, what they've done is illegal. Is
Yeah.
the military can bring you back if you retire and court martial you. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So they're afraid. Is they know what they've done is illegal, and if someone were to investigate and call them back,
They get accused and they get
oh my goodness,
convicted.
it's because they did it,
Oh
right?
my
And so
gosh.
so
So they'll never come out. They'll never speak the truth.
I don't want to say they will never, but
Right.
the incentive is for them not to come forward because wait a minute, you mean to tell me you're going to look at all the cases and what I did and let's look at them. Well, then why would you come forward? So those generals who come is look, they don't want to be known.
Yeah.
They've come to us privately to say, look, and in fact, I will tell you the exact language they use. Mistakes were made.
Oh my God. Yeah. Mistakes were made that ruined people's lives. How about that?
Correct. That's the language they use. And so they are like, look, we know, but we don't want to show because of the impact it will have. And like I said, I'll tell you about 2 prominent MST people who were on the team without
Yeah.
telling you who they are. One worked for an organization that was coaching people how to win your case with zero evidence. That's how we found out it was happening because
Yeah.
she shared, hey, here, like I was like, they were like, Arvis, how'd you know? I said, look, if she didn't have the courage, and I want to thank her for that, to come forward to tell us, we wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
So they knew the cases were faulty. They pushed them anyway. And I get a lot of I have a lot of conversations with MST survivors who are afraid. They're afraid they'll be called a traitor if they come out and speak the truth, that they'll be ostracized, that they'll be called a liar, that and some have even said that it will set back some of the changes, so they don't want to come forward. And then
Hmm.
the second one I told you, she was in security, so she investigated stuff in the military, and so she has said she told me about several cases where she knew of people making false allegations, and I asked her, I said, did you come forward? She said no. They were my friends, they were in situations. So what I'm thankful for is she acknowledged it happens,
Yeah.
right? But she gets paid to speak publicly about this. She doesn't want to come forward and say that.
Hmm.
And so I will tell you, our biggest advocates who help are moms of boys who go, wait a minute, you mean to tell me my son, if he looks at somebody too long? And I'm like, it depends on the eye of the beholder, right?
Right.
I said, you know what, if you go to the gym, and I said, one potato, two potato. I've heard between 3 and 4 potatoes is how long you can look, but I don't know. So
Well, what
I'm like,
happens if you recognize somebody? Like this happened to me in a gym where I like look over, I'm like, hey, I think I know that person from somewhere. And then I keep like looking, I keep looking, I'm like, who is that person? And then by the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I should just like walk up to him, be like, hey man, like I keep looking at you because I just feel like I know you from somewhere.
well,
Like,
Danny, it's the eye of the beholder.
oh my gosh.
It's hey, like I've asked, and people had never. I said, how many seconds? No. How many seconds for you? I said, how many potatoes? And I've heard anywhere from 2 to 4 potatoes, but I've only asked like 10. But
Right.
it's subjective. So you go
Yeah.
in the gym, you might wear something that some might consider scantily clad, and then you're surprised when someone looks. And I'll tell you this story. A friend of mine, she has large cleavage. She wears these deep V-neck type outfits that I always call Oktoberfest, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, Oktoberfest is the joke. And so she gets offended when people look, and I go, she'll say, hey, my eyes are up here. And I'm like, I said, why do the fruit bowl all the time? I'll call it the fruit bowl or Oktoberfest. And so Danny, she says that it's for Mr. Right, like he can look. And so I said, well, how do we know we're not Mr. Right?
Right. You're asking for trouble, I feel like.
So that's the thing is that you don't want to tell somebody what to wear, but they'll wear something. And again, it's if you look too long, you harassed me. And you know what? I want your listeners to go to their friends there and say, hey, look, if somebody looks at you too long and you're wearing something that might be tight or revealing, do you feel sexually harassed? And if you do, how long is appropriate for them to look at you?
What if they're not actually looking at you?
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Because like that's also subjective.
It is subjective. Now, this wasn't a military case. I read this online. I don't know how true it is, but there was a story of a blind man in a gym, right?
Oh yeah.
You can Google it. I don't know where it was, but he was accused and he got kicked out of the gym
Yeah.
because,
Yep.
and he was like, I am legally blind. And so I use that story to go, look, the dude couldn't see. He was blind, but he still got accused. And even, well, he's not looking at you. He's looking in space. He was kicked out of the gym. And someone sent me this clip in the UK. There was a team of 2 female police officers who were jogging through a neighborhood with a police cruiser behind them. And if anyone catcalled, they were arrested for harassment.
That's ridiculous.
Right. So that's where things are going. So
But I
that
also like I grew up when I was like 14, 15, 16. I would get catcalled on the street all the time. So to me, I'm like, well, that's just normal. People just do that.
right.
Like,
And
I mean, is it, do I like it? No, not really. But there's nothing I can really do about it.
military 2 years in prison and a dishonorable discharge,
Oh,
right?
good.
No catcalling. You no looking too long, no catcalling, no inappropriate jokes, no inappropriate language that somebody might construe. I've even told. I had a young man come to me. He complimented a female service woman in her uniform. Wow, you look really good in your uniform. Guess what? Bam. And it was like, so I go, no compliments, no nothing,
Yeah.
right? It's because you don't know, Danny, how someone will internalize it, right?
Right.
A look, a comment, a statement. And then I also tell leaders, I said, look, open door. There are no more closed door meetings. In fact, if I were you and you don't feel comfortable with a camera, I would have a witness. And I've had leaders tell me, you're right, Arb. If I have a female in my office, I have another female. And
Yep.
then
Yeah.
and I want to say, look, there are males who took advantage of the system too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there are men who take advantage of it, and so they'll say, just like you saw with the officer, is look, I'll have a man in the room with me, so they hear everything I say. I tell people in the military, we rank you, we give you fitness reports and evaluations. You didn't get ranked well, so you want to go after your boss, falsely accuse him, and nothing. And at that time, nothing would happen, and so that's the crazy part. You tell people this and they're like, Arvis, this is a world I can't understand. You don't understand. And I go, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying it's, hey, let's do this investigation and then let's act based on it so that this never happens again. So you can
Yeah.
correct some of these. I've got men who kill themselves, right? They're never coming back. I have young men who've been in prison. I'll tell you the candy bar story. This
Hmm.
guy was in Louisiana, Army story. He goes out to a bar with his friends. A woman comes up, he dances, they do some dirty dancing, kissing on the dance floor. His friends are whooping it up, oohing and eyeing. You know how they do it. She asked him in front of them, do you want to go back to your barracks room to play? He's like, not only yeah, but hell yeah.
Right.
Friends are oohing and eyeing. They go back. He's surprised. They have sex, but guess what? He does not use a condom.
Oh no.
So he tries to get her phone number. Like he's like, hey, I want to call you later. Oh
Yeah.
no, I'm married. She's married with 4 kids. So she told her husband she was going
Girl.
out for a candy bar. She lives in housing too. She told him she was going out for a candy bar. So so she goes home. She calls the police and asks for a morning after pill. They go, the only way you get that is if you're raped. So they keep asking her. She finally says, okay, I'm raped. She goes to the hospital. She doesn't want to give them a sample so they can go after the rapist. She doesn't want to give them her phone to go after the rapist. Wait a minute. If you were raped, why wouldn't you want to turn over the evidence? The police, they get her phone. They find out where she was. They look at the camera. They arrest the soldier. I think he's 21, 22 years old, 20 years in prison. He's been there a day.
Oh
His whole
my
20s
God.
has been in prison. His name's Anthony Santucci. Yeah. And it was, I call it the candy bar. So she says she's distraught. The investigator finds out she's at the same club less than 2 weeks later, dancing with 2 or 3 other guys who are not her husband. Then she leaves her husband for another guy. That's how distraught she is. And then
So
she gets
distraught.
the victim's benefit. So it was, think about it. If he had had a condom, she had unprotected sex, and she had to explain that. She'd already had 4 kids to her husband, right? So it was, well, I can't get pregnant again because it'll be the other person.
Right.
And and that's the type of stuff you see. Another guy, Army guy, this was a DV case. It's he gets divorced from his wife. She accuses him of DV. Now, what he knows is she left him while they were still married and lives with a police officer in another state. She accused the cop of stuff as well. But guess what? He had a recording. She's not punished, but they kick. This guy here is not allowed to
Why is she
use.
not punished?
Danny, you're asking the wrong guy. I
I
wish they
know.
would.
I'm just so like annoyed. I'm
So,
so annoyed. I'm sure you like dealing with this
I
every
am.
single day. Like,
So Danny, the guy, the other military member, he's not allowed to have the cop testify or use any of the evidence that his wife had a history of it.
are you
Because
kidding me?
so think about it. Look, but that's how they changed the law. And you're just like, well, wait a minute. She did this. And you're like, and there was another young man, his wife pulled a gun on him. So
Oh,
he hit
good.
her.
Yeah.
Drunk, she pulls a gun on him. He hits her to defend himself.
Yeah.
So that was the one who was the pilot. She got caught fraternizing and having an affair. He's about to divorce her, and she's going to get in trouble. She
Yeah.
accuses him of rape, and domestic violence. So with the gun charge, she violated the restraining order. She was drunk. She pulls a gun on him. He hit her to get the gun out of her hand. He still gets convicted.
Wait, that's self-defense.
Correct. The court later goes, you know what? The appellate court, he gets like, I think 17, 18 years in. Court goes, you know what? We made a boo-boo. That was self-defense. We're going to take a whole 30 days off your 17-year sentence.
Oh, thank you.
Correct. And because they knew that case was weak, they found an ex-girlfriend too to come forward. Well, guess what? That one got dropped because she kept sending him nudes.
Oh,
Like, hey, she said, hey, asking him for more stuff. So that one got dropped, but the wife, the other one, he got convicted, and he spent I think his 30s. He's been in prison. And so I got men who's still sitting in prison. The military wants you to sign a confession, right? To get services in prison so you can qualify for parole. I've got men, they won't sign it. They were like, you want me to sign and say I did it, even though you convicted me. I said I didn't do it. And this happened with the Air Force recently. So we had Air Force senior people contact us to say, okay, we want to help.
yeah.
And on one of my cases, they go, he signed a confession. So the guy representing us said, oh, you didn't tell me this guy signed a confession. I said, look, I didn't know. Let me look into it. And that's when I found out, well, they make everybody. If you want to get the training so you can get out early, you have to sign it. So
Oh my
then I
gosh.
give this guy the information. He goes back, and then they get quiet. It was Air
Mm,
Force. And then James identified the light colonel, the O5, by name on air. And then the Air Force quit talking to us after he
of
did that.
course.
So I was like, wait a minute. Well, you told us he signed a confession. Okay, we'll investigate. Let's see.
Yeah,
And then he
absolutely.
came back with hey, look, you forced this. Whoop. So before they would give you something to sign, my understanding now is they make you fill it out yourself, but
Mm,
if you're not showing enough contrition, right? So you write something, yeah, we don't think there's enough contrition here. And even if you pay for the training yourself, Danny, they go, we're not going to accept it. So
because
I
they want you to sign that confession. They
they
need
want
you to be fully at fault.
correct. So the guy who works with me is former law enforcement. So he was like, Arvis, we don't do this in federal and state at all. He says, wow. And I said, well, because when you get up to speak, they want to say, if that's true, you signed a confession, without saying, well, you wouldn't let me out unless I signed this.
Right.
And so you hear these things, you see these things, and you're like, if this was a movie, you're like, who would play you in the movie, Danny? I don't, because it's crazy.
Right.
That's what I tell people. I said, who would play you in this movie? And would anybody believe it?
No.
So if you called it fiction, they'd be like, ooh, right? But it's true. It happens. It's happening. And you go, wow. So I am hopeful that President Trump will. I think he's at least open enough. It's just getting the signal to him.
Right.
It's getting the signal to him. And then if he does do it, what happens when a new administration comes in? Are they going to do like they did with the colleges? And I'm going to tell you the biggest mistake
Probably.
the Democrats made with the colleges. So that strategy was working, Danny. They had a lot of female support. And then you know what the Democrats did that messed up that support?
What?
They let transgender men play female sports. And then women said, wait a minute,
Yep.
you've gone
Yep.
too far. You've gone too far. Now, and I don't know what those numbers are, but it wasn't a ton of them who did it. But they go, no, you're taking opportunities away. And I think President Trump capitalized on that.
Oh
But it was,
yeah.
how are you treating men, though, in general, with this always believe the person? So nobody brought that up. So that's the thing I share with people, and I get the disbelief, which is why I said, hey, start here for the investigation. There was a defense advisory committee. I brought people to testify there,
Hmm.
and I would tell you they were shocked, and they start looking into the stuff I said, and they were like, holy crap, we've had this panel for 10 years, and you're telling us stuff we didn't know. And the military's like, ooh,
Don't look at us. We didn't
don't
do it.
look at us. Is pretend you don't see this, nothing to see here. And you're like, wait a minute. You mean you did this? And think about it. The military can't throw Congress under the bus.
Right.
You can't say, we got pressured. We know you got pressured. So in fact,
It's the military. You get pressure for everything.
I had a journalist who came to me who said, Arvis, I talked to the military. They hear you. They want you to point to Congress. And so I told this journalist, I said, tell me which senator, congressman, or president told them to stack the panels, told them to not allow evidence, told them to alter statements multiple times. And the journalists put their head down. I said, look, I believe that. I believe that they
Yeah.
were pressured, but it was, they didn't tell them to do this, right?
No.
I said, this I can show, right? Is I don't know those conversations they had in closed doors with congressmen and senators. I have letters and I have some stuff, but it's, look, I know what they did here and I can show it.
Yeah.
And then if they're willing to come forward and say Congress made me do it, which I don't think they will, but they could. And I would tell you, we've even had outreach from congressmen and senators who looked into it. I will tell you about a prominent congressman without saying his name, of course. He met with one of our representatives, and he was with two senior military officers, and he said, they want to crush you. And he said, okay. And he says, I asked them, tell me where they're lying. Danny, they go, they're not. They
That's why they
just,
want to crush you.
they don't like the message. They
Of
don't like,
course. They
and
don't
so,
like it, shut it down, and they can't shut you down yet.
correct. And so that's the challenge. And so you see me doing these podcasts and educating, and I want to say that your podcast matters because you're shining a light on something. You're extremely courageous. I want to thank you. I mean, think about how strong your message is, given your own experience, right?
Yeah, it was hard to agree to this.
Look, I get that. And look, I will be frank with you. I didn't expect you to come back. Like I gave you the space and I said, look, look, this is because I didn't know at first. And then you shared that. And I said, look, this is going to be triggering.
Yeah.
And I've had an MST advocate admit to me, she's a victim herself. Her son was falsely accused, but she can't say that out loud because she's afraid of the impact to the community and the commitment. Is that she had to fight it, and that's what when she learned, she's like, oh my God, my son was falsely accused. And then when she had to fight, and she says, I'm an advocate, I'm an outspoken person, and I was thankful that she shared that with me. She said, Arv, look, and then I think she was a little upset. Arv, I should have shared that. I said, look, I'm not going to tell your name, but it was that's what it took for her to say, I was on the other side. And I saw, and that's what clicked for her and said, man, I didn't realize that you could create a system and change it to the point where this could happen. So
It's really hard because, like, to me, it was hard to accept that they will not believe actual victims and simultaneously believe, like, falsely accusing victims in the same system at the same time.
right.
Like that to me, and it took me a while. Like after our first conversation, I got off the phone with you and I cried for like 2 hours because I was like, I just can't believe this. I can't hold both these thoughts in my head at the same time. Like I literally research conspiracy theories for a living, and I'm like, this is too hard for me because it's so personal, right?
Okay.
And then after that, I was like, you know what? Forget that guy. I'm never talking to him again. And it took me
That's
a while to get to the point where I was like, no, I think both things can be true. I think that they can believe. And what a lot of people don't understand is that East Coast Navy and West Coast Navy are drastically different. So I'm wondering if it hit the East Coast hard and fast because you're right there, you're right next to DC, and the West Coast, they were like, we'll get there eventually.
I will tell you my experiences. It hit them all, and I will tell you a West Coast story. So she ended up retiring as a Navy chief. So she's a yeoman who served as a paralegal on the West Coast. So think, there's 10 regions. So she's out in that San Diego region.
Yeah.
And so Danny, she was acting as a paralegal. She saw 500 cases of false accusations of sexual assault in the Navy in 1 year.
Oh my goodness.
In 1 year. So what does she do? She raises it to the chain of command. She's working for the JAGs, and they go, shut up. And she wouldn't shut up. She was the number one E6, and they fired her. And
Oh
then it took
no.
her longer to get E7 to make chief.
Yeah.
I had to wait a couple until she retired. So I was aware of her. She retires. She does an interview with me, and I have a copy of it. And they call her after that interview, and they called her some things.
Of
Like,
course they did.
I think it was '06 Jag called and some other things like, what are you doing? She got offered a job with the government.
Hmm.
And she's like, Arvis, I'm so sorry. I can't do any more interviews.
They're
So,
gonna
but she
pay her
did
to shut
do,
up.
right. She did do one for me, though. She did do one, and I appreciate it. And we have it and we still use it. But they came for her. And so that's how you know they're watching, is that she got a flood of calls. She's like, Arvis, I did that interview. And we waited till she retired. And
Right, absolutely.
she's like, Arvis, it was wrong. I went to them and they're like, and then when I told you, as she said it out loud, she was like, oh my God. And look, I've had JAGs come forward. There's a JAG who was a special victims prosecutor who wrote an article and said they need to stop this. Like he's been out of the military for like 10 years. But he wrote, I called him, I think he's in New Jersey. And he was like, I said, dude, can you get on some podcast? He said, oh
Yeah.
no, I'm removed. I don't he says, I wrote that article. Here's a few more I wrote. He says, yes. And he talked about the colleges, what they were doing at colleges, universities, and the military. And all he did was prosecute these cases. And he said, this is wrong. So we've had people come forward to say, look, we know it's wrong. I've talked to judges and they're like, Arvis, I could lose my law license
Oh
because of that,
yeah. Excuse me.
right? Yeah, and you go, wait a minute, you did this? Like, okay, so there's one where this went all the way up to a 4-star, and I have a copy of the letters. This guy in his work center, he's flirting with a young lady. She is married. She used to exotic dance before she joined the military. No shaming.
Yeah, whatever.
He's a bodybuilder, and that's who she's attracted to. So she plans a getaway, but she tells her husband she's going with her girlfriend, right?
Mm.
He's hardly a girlfriend, big old dude.
He
She goes,
identifies as a girlfriend.
all right, takes him out, brings him to an exotic club, and they do what they do. Well, guess what? The husband finds out she did not go with the girlfriend. So
Yep.
she's staying at his house doing it. She says she was raped, but she doesn't want to press charges.
Hmm.
He says, I'm going to tell all our friends and family if you don't. So she doesn't. So they look at all the evidence, and thankfully, the judge goes, this is BS. At the '05 level, '06 level, 1-star level, 2-star level, 4-star level, they throw out the case.
Oh, good.
I'm like, holy crap. Someone contacts the 4-star. So,
Mm.
so I have the packet of all the way going up where they threw it out. So someone contacts the 4-star, and a program that wasn't funded all of a sudden gets funding. She brings back the case. Now the judge says you can't bring back the case that you dismissed with no new evidence. Bring it back. Is the member was able to get behind the scenes emails. One of the few cases that did. They asked for a judge because they said the previous judge was less than stellar.
Mm.
So there were so in his case, I think there were 1,500 emails that went back and forth behind the scenes.
Wow.
They only got 250 of them.
Okay.
And then they're like, wait a minute, you were colluding to get the right judge. He was convicted the second time and he was sent to prison. So I've sent people the packet to say, look, this went all the way up to a 4-star who said dismiss it, who saw the evidence. And then someone called and it came back. And so I go, look, we'll show you stuff. And that's how we got it. People are like, they want something to be done, Danny. They just don't want to have their name attached to it because they've done some things. And that's what I tell people. I go, look, people will say there is no perfect victim. So I said, then why does the accuser have to be perfect to demand justice? I go, look, I mean, yes, she was married. He's not a choir boy. He just didn't rape her, right? Look, yes, this guy did it, but he didn't do that. And again, what saddens me kind of the most is that they know, Danny, and they
Yeah.
just they want to turn the page, wait about 100 years, and then go back in the day that happened. We will never do that again. That was and then everybody's dead.
Right. So it doesn't matter. They've washed their hands of it. They're like, oops.
Correct. So
Yeah.
think about, I think President Biden in one of his last years, he passed a bill for some Agent Orange people. So think about when they got exposed to Agent Orange.
Yep.
Most of them have passed away, and now you want to address it, right? Think about burn pits. If you didn't have Jon Stewart advocating for burn pits, it never happens. Think about the water rights people. Is
Yeah.
most of the water rights people still haven't been paid, right?
No. And they still
So
don't have access to clean water either.
so I go, and then we're coming right with this, and they're like,
Yeah.
hey, R, we hate you. Don't talk to us. Don't talk about it. And we go, look, let's do the investigation. I get it. Your audience is like, Harv, you said, I go, I get it. You should be skeptical. I said, give me that investigation. Let's look. Let's be fair. Let's be just. But then when you see it, you can't unsee it. And
Right.
when you see it, we want to go back and we want to claw back. We want to say, okay, look, if you want to call these guys bad, then what about the guys who threw out evidence that was useful, denied things, stacked juries, did all this stuff to force convictions? Are they honorable, right? Even though they got honorable discharges and retired, are
That's a
they?
good point because like I'm over here like yelling about these victims that are falsely accusing these guys. Well, you've got all these other people that also perpetrated the issue.
Correct?
Like like all this is like a wheel that just like ugh,
A
I'm so
wheel. That's the
frustrated.
Game of Thrones right there. And
Yeah.
the wheel keeps turning, right?
Yep.
So there is no breaking the wheel. There's just new people spinning it. That's all.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, my loved one is in jail right now because they were falsely accused or whatever the situation is, how do they get a hold of you and what you're doing?
So one way is my email is out there, right? I'll give it Arvis Owens at yahoo.com, right? Don't tease me because I got a Yahoo. Uh, Numbers out there. They can contact anyone I've done a podcast with, has carte blanche to reach out. I had someone call me yesterday. After every one of these events, we talk about it. I've even had people going through the process, and I would tell you I'm 29-0. If they get me before they go to court martial, all of those have been dismissed or dropped. But
Okay.
again, I'm very strict about what I take. Is it's got to be clear and convincing, right?
Right.
If it's on the line, I'm like, no. I said, look, it's clear and convincing. I said, so one thing I tell people is, look, you got to tell your parents. I have so many young men who get falsely accused, they do not want to tell their mama.
Mm.
Is Danny, I will talk to their mama for them. I offer a mama talking and a daddy talking service. And and what's touchy is some of them involve the BDSM space. Those
hmm
are very touchy cases. Is the son doesn't want mom to know he likes to be tied up and whipped.
That
And I
seems
don't know.
reasonable. That seems like something you might not want to tell your mama.
Right, it'll come up in the case, and so they don't have the resources to get lawyers and investigators, but mom and dad do. And so I said, look, you give me the number, I will. I've done it. Hey, you don't know me. My name is Arvis. Here's what I do. Here's some stuff. And I said, look, I need to talk to you about little Johnny and what Johnny likes. And you know what surprised Danny? A lot of time, mom suspects, dad suspects already.
Oh yeah.
They didn't confirm, and so
Moms know. Like your mom already knows.
right. So it's I'll walk you through it. I'll be there for emotional support. I'll give you advice that I wish I had had. And it's been amazing. Is a lot of those cases, like all of those cases I've worked with before, again, they went to the process, they got dropped. Now I'll tell you a sad story is there is a military influencer with millions of followers who I helped last year, this time in the fall. Got his case was completely dropped. He was supposed to do an interview, and then he still communicates, but he is deathly afraid. He
Yeah.
has in the millions. He's a so. I'd like your audience to try and guess who it is in the comments,
Hmm.
but I don't say his name, But he was falsely accused, and he was so surprised because he's one of the faces, one of the golden kids, you know, military influencers, millions of followers, meets with senior level people and stuff like that. He was falsely accused. And that's when it became real for him, Danny. It
Yeah.
happened to him. Everything was dropped. Is Yeah, everything was dropped. But he is deathly afraid that his audience won't support him anymore. They'll leave him. That the military will come back and says, you know what? We investigated, we threw it out, but you know what? You ran your mouth to Arvis, we're gonna come get you. He is deathly afraid.
That's a genuine that's a genuine fear though because
It is.
like with a I feel like social media, content creation,
Correct.
it's so volatile. Like at any point, people can just drop you for anything, and so it's scary.
Oh, look, and I would tell you that's why. So I told you a couple of the MST survivors who are now working, they want to do it publicly. So I've always had some privately helping.
Right.
So thank you and thank them because now they're like, or we checked it out, and you know what, you're right, is we want to be part of the solution,
Yeah.
and so I appreciate wholeheartedly that you can have two ideas at the same time because I tell them, look, I support true victims. I also believe the military should not handle these cases because of the politics and things like that.
Yeah.
That's a shared belief. We want you to be supported. And at the same time, we would like those people who falsely accused not to be included. So if you notice language, I say accuser, right?
Yeah.
Before you become a victim. If you're not, then you're just an accuser. So thank you again for you doing this. You're entirely brave and you surprised me because you're right. I said, you know what? I'm going to give her space. I said, I didn't tell anybody, but I thought that the chances of me winning the Powerball were great. Calling me back and doing this podcast. So I want to thank you so much for doing it and for your audience for listening and for going down this rabbit hole with us that there's a ton of rabbits in this hole.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming on and being patient with me. I know, like, yeah, it took a lot for me to get here, and even now, I'm like, how come there's so many falsely accused? I think I'll battle with this forever. So, but I appreciate you just like, you know, being who you are because you make it easy for somebody who's been on the opposite side, who's like an actual victim and actually accused somebody, and they were like, nope, that didn't happen. You made that up. For
Right.
like, that's really hard to be like, how come there's all these people that are getting accused and getting convicted and nothing actually happened? So, um,
Danny, I want to share this with you just lastly is my mother is a victim. Is when I was about 11 years old, a man broke into our home. I was raised by a single mom, put a knife to her throat and threatened to kill her and me.
oh my
And
gosh.
so I didn't share that story with a lot of people. And I get very emotional when I talk about it. But I took the stand and I shared that. I said, I would never, ever do that and put someone in that situation. And so that's what I tell people is we can have two ideas and we can figure out how to bring them together. So thank you again for being so brave and having that courage and for your audience for sticking with us. And what I ask them, if you feel appropriate, I have a petition, www.change.org/unjust UCMJ. Share this video with everyone you know and people you don't. Ask them to like, share it with everybody so people hear the message and reach out if you need help, if you need support. We are here.
And I'll link all that in the show notes. And until next week, my friends, stay skeptical and we'll see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast written, hosted, and produced by me, Danny Mercy. Special thanks to Lindsay for research and writing. If you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow us on social media at rabbit.holepodcast and visit our website at stayskeptical.com for everything else.